Hello, everybody, and welcome to Madden Benz Unfiltered this week, brought to you by Rush to Crush Cancer, the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. It's more than a ride, it's a mission. Join us May the 19th for the Rush to Crush Cancer bike ride. To register, go to rushtocrushcancer.org and help us in the fight against cancer. Join the ride. Tim Benz, Mark Madden with you. Glad that you're with us. And, Mark, we got plenty to talk about as it relates to the Penguins, Duquesne's run in the NCAA Tournament, the Shohei Ohtani situation in baseball. But let's start with Mike Tomlin, since we didn't get to this during the podcast yesterday. He spoke in Orlando, Florida at the owners' meetings, the league meetings, talked about a number of topics, including embracing a lack of comfort as it relates to bringing in Arthur Smith from the outside as the offensive coordinator. I'm really glad Mike Tomlin is comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I've been uncomfortable and anxious with the Steelers for 7 years.
Well, like most things Mike Tomlin says, I don't even know what that means. It's just babble. It's just platitudes. Every single word that drips out of that man's mouth is horse manure. I don't believe any of it. I barely listened to all of it.
Well, one thing that was clear was, he was asked a number of questions about the quarterbacks, obviously. And when he was asked about Russell Wilson repeatedly, he talked about lots of off-the-field things and resume and experience, etc. I just didn't hear a lot from him, even when he was asked directly about how good he thinks Wilson could be on the field, which to me remains the biggest mystery. I know what his resume is. I know the lack of money he's costing the Steelers, but how good is he going to be?
Well, yeah, it's like he hired a Girl Scout troop leader. You know, he's going to help bake brownies. He's going to lead the sing-along at the campfire. But excuse me, yeah, I don't think we need to be told by him what to expect from Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, good in the red zone last year, kind of meh otherwise, better than Pickett. That's the phrase we should always remember. Tomlin didn't say it. I am, and it's obvious. Better than Pickett.
I just have very little faith, to go back to his willingness to be uncomfortable. I'm uncomfortable that they're ever going to get the quarterback situation right. Theoretically,
I'm uncomfortable that they haven't won a playoff game in 7 years.
Yeah, and I think
that is the source of my discomfort, Coach.
Yeah, 1 + 1 = 2 there. You know, they probably over-evaluated who Mason Rudolph was when he came out of the draft, and now it feels like they're letting him walk as soon as he's figuring it out. Mitch Trubisky was never worth signing in the first place. They took a swing and they missed on Kenny Pickett. So I am uncomfortable with their ability to evaluate the quarterback position, period.
Tim, in all seriousness, I'll do what you want, but why do we analyze the babble of a guy who says nothing?
Because he gives us nothing else to babble about ourselves, probably.
Well, then move on. I don't believe a word the guy says, and he says nothing anyway.
Do you disbelieve him about what he said about Deontay Johnson too? Because I do on that front as well. I don't know, and I don't know why. I don't know why he would refute Johnson asking for a trade if he did, or I don't know why that seems to have come out the way that it has. Everybody seemed unified in saying Johnson wanted out.
That's a hurt daddy talking. Okay, Deontay was one of his guys, and he wanted out, so he's denying.
Yeah, well, maybe that's it, because he was more than willing to say that Kenny Pickett wanted a change of scenery, but he's trying to refute the Johnson.
Tim, this harkens back to what I said at the opening of our discussion about his discussion. But what he says is useless. Everything Tomlin says is useless.
Because honestly, if Johnson didn't want out and Johnson was fine to stay here, then they probably should have kept Johnson, because I think Johnson's a better wide receiver than Jackson is a quarterback.
No, I disagree. I think Deontay Johnson was going to cause more problems than he was worth at his price.
All right, then as far as anything else Tomlin got to, anything else worthwhile there at all, maybe in terms of where they're leaning for the draft? If it comes down to it, do you go with the center? Because it sure sounded like that's the direction they were leaning in, more so than wide receiver or more cornerbacks.
I don't know. There's a lot of centers, right? What round do you need to take a center in? And the fact that he brought up Nate Herbig's name, that's the one thing that did make me wonder.
Well, I'd say this about
Tim, one thing I want to make clear.
Yeah.
You know the guy who, I see him in the comment section. You know the guy who collects jock straps?
I don't know what his name is. I thought he went by the name of the company.
No, he goes by like a Penguin's last name. If his comment gets up here, I just click off. He never appears on this again. I'm telling you right now. He never appears on this again. He's in the comments right now. You can see him. If he clicks up here, I'm off.
All right. Well, then we'll avoid him, and
right.
we'll get to what he had
if
to
we could delete his comment even where I can see it, I'd appreciate it.
There we go. I think
very good. There you go. If there's any way to bar him from watching, I'd appreciate it too.
Like go to his house and take his computer away.
Worse, take his jock straps away.
No, I'll go back to what you said about the centers. I mean, it does appear to be a good draft for centers, especially at the top if they want to get one. How long do they last? I don't know, but there's depth at the wide receiver and cornerback position and at tackle too, for that matter. So center to me, if they want to go for the best guy, go ahead and get him and maybe go for the bulk later on the second or third day. But you're right. I mean, they don't have to overextend for a center. Creed Humphrey went in the second round. They could have had him there. Instead, they went with Freiermuth.
To me, one of the key things they got to do is get a right tackle to move Broderick Jones to left tackle. But I don't sense they're in a hurry to do that.
No, and Tomlin was non-committal about that.
You know, they just love Dan Moore Jr. They love him.
Yeah,
they love him.
There are good tackles to be had, and maybe you have your bookends for the next 10 years, but they, to your point, want to seem like they have made the efforts of working with Dan Moore pay off because there's value there. They're always hunting for value instead of going for just the best guy.
You don't hunt for value at left tackle. You hunt for excellence. They found it. They're refusing to use it. I would bet that Broderick Jones plays right tackle and Dan Moore left week 1.
The funny thing is, I think they finally learned their lesson about hunting for value nonstop when it comes to inside linebackers. That's why they went out and paid and got Patrick Queen, because they were done doing it at that position.
Tim, we've overreacted badly to all the great moves they've made, and they are great. The great moves they made in the offseason, it is a small sample size of knowing what you're doing. They will yet redeem themselves in that regard.
All right, so Steelers fans want to hear from you, your thoughts on anything that Tomlin said down in Orlando or anything they've done in the offseason. But you talk about making moves, Mark. What moves can the Penguins make to get better, or are they just screwed?
To get better when?
Well, not this year. There's nothing else they could do this year. So how about the offseason?
Well, I have a column going up in the Trib. They got to really seriously consider the future of everybody not named Sidney Crosby. They got to consider Sullivan because he can't fix anything. Tell me one thing that's been a problem this year, Tim, that's gotten better.
Oh, nothing.
The power play. The power play is a direct reflection on coaching because either they're teaching the wrong things or more likely the wrong things are being done and they're not correcting them because they can't tell the big contracts what to do. They don't even practice 3-on-3. They played, I got it written down here, Tim, forgive me. They have played 3-on-3 overtime 15 times this year. They've won 3 times during the 3-on-3 phase. Okay, I thought when they got Carlson and Letang both back there for 3-on-3, they'd be unbeatable, but they don't practice it. And guess what? It looks like they don't practice it, although, boy, Letang got burned yesterday by Jonathan Drouin, and that's a problem, too, that doesn't reflect on Sullivan. Next season, their best players will be 38, 37, 37, and 34. All of them have hit a wall at one time or another this year, including Sid, except for Eric Carlson, who never really, to me, has gotten started.
Can Carlson be moved? Do you think the contract is movable?
Yeah, if you pick up like 2/3 of his salary.
Yeah, at that point, you might as well then keep him. Especially,
exactly.
You know, depending on what they want to do with Letang. If they do,
I'd be curious what they. It's going to be tough to trade Letang too because he has 4 years left on his contract. 4 years. So I think that the coach is what they should look at because that would affect major change. Period. But I don't think they're going to do that.
Because they think he's the right guy, or because they're wed to the contract, given that the extension is just about to start.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Yeah,
but as I suggested in my column today, and I'm a big fan, and I have a lot of faith in Kyle Dubas. I mean, he inherited a bad situation. Tim, this roster looks like exactly what it is, assembled by 3 GMs inside of 3 years.
A hodgepodge of nothingness.
Exactly. Maybe worse than nothingness. But I wish Kyle would stop talking about all the faith they have in Mike Sullivan. That sounds even dumber than Mike Sullivan saying how hard they played at Denver after blowing a 4-0 lead.
Yeah, I think I saw like 37 seconds worth of a post-game press conference with him after the Colorado game, and to go back to babble or nothingness coming from a head coach.
No question.
That's what I took from that.
Hashtag hockey Tomlin.
Yeah, they've become the same guy, same first name, same results over the last 7 years, basically, or close to
Can't
it.
argue that. Can't argue that at all.
And
Sullivan, Tim, they only play one way. They play fast, and the problem is they're slow. You know what happens when you play fast and you're not fast? You lose to a faster team 7 times in a row, like the New Jersey Devils.
Or you lose the last 2 periods, or last period and a half to the Avalanche, and that's enough to erase a 4-0.
No, Tim, I credit that to not knowing how to manage a lead.
Well, that comes into play, too. That's also been a question mark for Sullivan.
Same old stuff there, too, Tim. Like in New Jersey, there were like 2 goals against in like 16 seconds. And at Denver, the Penguins took a 4-0 lead and conceded a goal 25 seconds later. You know what you do after you're up 4-0? There was like how much left in the period? 4 minutes in the period or something? You say, okay, get to the intermission. When they get inside at intermission and realize they're down 4-0, they'll think, okay, better luck next game.
Well, you know what's funny is I was driving around listening to the game yesterday, and I think they had a 2-0 lead. Maybe they might have even been 3-0, and they went on a power play, and the Avalanche had about 3 really good short-handed opportunities on that power play.
On one power play.
Yeah, you remember that?
Yes.
And Borky was on the broadcast going, boy, if you roll out Erik Karlsson and Evgeny Malkin on the same power play, you better have your rosary beads ready. And I was thinking to myself,
what he said. It was great.
That used to be a compliment. Like, in theory, that should be a compliment. Like, the other team better have their rosary beads ready.
No,
your rosary beads have to be ready on your bench. Like, that's not the way.
I'm not a big believer in a higher power, but that was our only hope at that point.
You know, so you made the comment on the podcast, and I think it's an accurate one, but we should probably dive into it a little bit more here, that the best thing for Dubas to do is to bring in the guys with the 4 big contracts, meaning Sid, Letang, Malkin, and Karlsson, and say, look, we're burning the rest of it down. You can stay if you want. Otherwise, you should try to let us move you. If that were to happen, what do you think those 4 guys would say? What do you think they would do? How would they react to that sort of ultimatum there?
I don't know. Because a lot of things color it differently for each player. Mm-hmm. Karlsson's unmovable because of the contract. Malkin's unmovable because he's just done. Letang and Crosby would be guys you could move. But if you move Crosby and Letang, who are the 2 guys, I mean, Letang up until a month ago was real good. Since then, he's been real bad. But like, what if you get stuck only with Malkin and Karlsson?
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't think they'd ever trade Sid unless Sid walked out if you did give him that option that you're talking about.
Sid would have to ask.
Yeah,
Sid
maybe
would have to very, very publicly ask, too.
It would never get
They couldn't do one of those deals. Hey, I'm not knocking Sid. But the Penguins can't say, Sid has to be traded. And then when Sid talks to media, he says, well, whatever they want to do is okay. You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean.
If Sid wants to be traded, he has to own it. And if he won't own it, they can't trade him.
Do you think
to trade him at the club's behest would be a disaster?
Do you think he'd ever
and I'm not trying to run Sid out of town either. Mm-hmm. Sid was great yesterday. I mean, Sid, think about this, Tim. Sid had 4 points. It was +4 to 5-4 loss.
Would he ever adopt the Paul Bissonnette approach of trying to wedge himself?
God, I hope not. I hope that the best player, one of the top 5 players in history, never thinks like a wheeling nailer.
Have they already missed their window on Jari? Like, is Jari already?
No, he's still tradable.
Okay, just because you got a guy under contract, a fixed number, and he's a decent enough goalie, he could be used somewhere else.
No. At a position of real need around the league, he's tradable.
What do you think about how well Gensel's worked out with Carolina?
Oh, he's playing great. I mean, might be some adrenaline, but he's playing great. I think the true test for him will be how he does wherever he signs next year over a full 82 games.
And you don't think that's going to be Carolina still, regardless of how well he's played?
They just don't pay guys. Not many, anyway.
Okay.
They tend to, when they pay guys, they tend to pay the homegrown guys.
All right, so Penguins fans, we do want to hear from you as well on the state of affairs with the team after the collapse in Colorado yesterday. That could have been one of their better wins of the season. Instead, it turned out to be one of their worst days because of how they blew it. By the way, Jonathan Drouin rolling back the clock against the Penguins. You mentioned his name. That looked like the guy who used to burn him all the time in the playoffs, Mark.
I've always thought that he was a good player, though. Maybe because I mostly see him play against the Penguins.
Yeah, that just seems – he seems to be one of those guys that plays his best against Pittsburgh all the time. And he looked like the guy that beat him didn't beat him in series, but at least burned them in series and was difficult to deal with when they played against him in the postseason. Let's get to the Shohei Ohtani thing, Mark, because that's obviously an interesting talking point. And
Tim, he's addressing the media today, I think, right?
Oh, Shohei is? Through the interpreter?
So.
A different interpreter?
I think so. I just want to hear his Sweet 16 picks.
He was at a game. Did you see that? He went to an NCAA tournament game.
Of course he was.
Wanted to
now,
see
there's this thing where like a lot of money was bet in Japan on games he pitched bad, right? Bet against him.
Yeah, there was a thread that I saw on Twitter. Some guy claiming he got some inside information from.
It seems far-fetched. Yeah. We don't know that for sure.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of play on Twitter. I haven't seen it directly refuted yet. I haven't seen anybody run with it as Bible yet either. But I don't know if this guy claims to have inside knowledge about what the investigation is with Major League Baseball. But apparently there were some connections between big money moved in Japan on days where Ohtani pitched and pitched poorly. Which is
I don't buy that. Why did the interpreter fly back to Japan to place the bets?
No, just had somebody do it for him because he was doing it for Shohei. You know, so
okay. Here's one thing I've said repeatedly and will again now. Ohtani was the guy betting. Nobody extended the interpreter a $4.5 million line of credit. Nobody did that.
Well, do you think, as I do, that the long and the short of this ends up being Pete Rose gets in to deflect any attention away from Shohei to sort of tamp down the hypocrisy of it?
I think Pete Rose getting in is an admission of Ohtani's guilt.
That's kind of how it would be, but it would also lift the veil of what's bad for the goose is good for the gander. You know what I mean?
I think they're up the creek without a paddle on this one.
Yeah, they might be.
I don't think there's any good way out of this.
You know, especially if Ohtani if they do determine that he was blatantly betting against himself and against his own team, that's never.
Let me tell you what. They kicked him out of baseball. Nobody would ever bet on baseball again.
It would certainly send the message.
No baseball player, I should say. Right.
Did he tip him?
Tim, if they can find he bet on baseball, they have to kick him out.
Did he tip his own hand on this?
We've had decades of that BS about it's right there on the door of the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
If he bet on baseball, they got to kick him out.
No, I agree. Did he sort of set himself up with how he structured the contract with the deferred payments that got everybody sort of talking about this and looking at this and investigating this?
Yeah, but he's made $1 jillion already. So I don't, you know what I mean? I don't think he's hurting for money. I don't think he's betting to try to get more money. Maybe he's hurting for money because he's no good at betting.
There you go. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know how often he's lost. I mean, if you believe that thread, he was pretty good at setting himself up to lose when he needed to. That's for sure.
I heard he lost a high-stakes poker game to Phil Kessel and a high-stakes golf match to Mario.
Where was Yager involved? Was he involved in any of this?
Yager lost to everybody.
Do you think Shohei is the fence for the missing bobbleheads?
Could be.
What else did I want to get to? Oh, the Pirates. We're not going to talk again between now and opening day, Mark, because you're out next week. So what do you think about the Pirates?
Opening day is this week, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. Actually, opening day is going to be this week. So
I can't wait.
Well, how do you think they're going to do in terms of their win total? Is it going to be significantly up? They're going to get another 10 games better as they did last year?
What did they win last year? 72?
77, I think, right?
They won 77.
I think so. Wasn't that what their total was last year?
I don't think they'll win that this year. Their pitching's off.
So they don't get above 5. Like, they don't take that next step to be above 500 is what I'm getting at.
No. Their starting pitching isn't good enough. And it could be, but they just don't want it to be. They could have Bauer and Skeens in the rotation.
76. I'm sorry. It was 76.
I can't understand why they signed Domingo Germán to a contract that pays more than Bauer if he pitches in the majors when he was suspended for domestic violence and took time off for booze, whereas Trevor Bauer is unequivocally innocent. It makes you realize that MLB has blackballed Trevor Bauer.
Let's get some comments, Mark, and I don't think anybody that you don't want to see is going to be here. At least the one guy you were looking at has been blocked, is what I'm told here.
Good.
Eric says once...
He can concentrate on the jock straps.
Once one of the bright spots on this team, goaltending, particularly Jari, has been brutal the last month. To what do you attribute the recent decline?
I don't particularly blame the goaltenders. I think it's just a matter of battling uphill has caught up with them. I think a matter of battling uphill has caught up with a lot of these players.
Yeah, it just might be not necessarily being overworked, but how about overtaxed within individual games? That the odds have just basically caught up to them with the amount of chances that they're seeing.
Yeah, it's a bad team. Like, I hope we're not still pretending this is a good team getting bad breaks. A good team having a bad year. It's a bad team.
Yeah,
it's a bad roster.
The other thing that's really damning for the immediate future is at some point they got to get younger, and you can't rely on Mike Sullivan being a coach to coach young players because he's proven he doesn't want to do that.
That's my fear. I wrote in a Trib column over the weekend that you could gamble on youth next year. You could take a chance that guys arrive early. It might not work, but you bring Jaeger up from juniors. You have Koivunen and Ponomarev, the guys they got from Carolina. But you bring those guys in that probably play less minutes than Nola Chari.
Ron says the play that Carlson made on the Avs' second goal was mind-numbing.
I've seen that play 10 times this year.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate. Mind-numbing, but also repeated. Richard says Sullivan should not return, especially with how the Pens have absolutely imploded this season. Unfortunately, I see very little happening other than a few minor moves around the core.
Those contracts, the Malkin and Letang and the Carlson contract being brought in have painted them into a corner.
Sam says, why are the Pirates preseason games broadcast on AM instead of the flagship affiliate?
Why would we know that?
I don't know why we know that, and I don't know why you're so desperate to listen to spring training games. I know that Cruz is hitting home runs like crazy, but you got 162 Major League Baseball games that you can listen to in the regular season.
All I know is that my ratings once again through the roof.
RJ says, would Steelers...
That's probably from when you filled in.
Which I'll be doing quite a bit, by the way, because you're away coming up for your trip to England that we'll get to in a second.
If it fails, it's on you.
RJ says, would the Steelers have been better off trading Johnson to Kansas City for Snead?
No.
Well, I don't think Kansas City would have done it.
Right, but they don't need Snead. But I'll tell you what they could have done was get Snead instead of Queen. And I'm not complaining because they got Queen, but Snead might have helped more. How much money do you got to spend on defense before it actually performs like an elite defense?
This is from Bill, who says Mike Sullivan's time has run its course. He was great when he won the Cups in 16 and 17, but he's quickly become the Penguins' equivalent of Mike Tomlin. We talked about that earlier. No playoff series wins since 2018. Thanks to the Cups, but it's time to move on. And you made the point, Mark, in the podcast that when it comes to like in-game coaching or coaching adjustments or laying out the foundation for the team, maybe Sullivan did the latter. He kind of gave them a script to read every night, and they did it well. But aside from that, let's not get too crazy about his imprint on what happened.
Now, Tim, they're a slow team that has made the same mistakes over and over again all year. The same things crop up that are damaging, like goals allowed in proximity, goals allowed after scoring goals, all the shorthanded goals allowed, the power play failure. But nothing changes, Tim. You know why? Because this is the way we play.
Yeah.
And, goodbye. I mean, I hate to be so blunt, but goodbye.
Well, that's another similarity to Tomlin right there is the stubbornness.
And Bylsma.
Well, there you go. And Bylsma.
You know what I hate too? I hate, and I have a lot of respect for Sullivan, but that can deteriorate, to be honest. And I hate in press conferences when he implies that we're doing things you don't see, not to me specifically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's subtleties, there's nuance. No, there's not.
Well, the big one was the nuance of how they were losing all these one-goal games. We didn't understand how they were losing the one-goal games. Even if we didn't, let's say we didn't, it doesn't matter. You're still losing them.
Well, not only that, Tim, I as someone who's 63 years old and has been going since 1967 and covered the team on and off since 1980, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck, okay? I know one thing they're not doing ever is trapping. Except for Game 3 against New York in 2022. They did it. It worked to protect the lead. They didn't do it again the rest of the series. They blew leads in games 5, 6, and 7, and we've never seen it since. Like Sam Nover used to say. Boy, I feel good at quoting Sam Nover. I'm not an expert, but I talk to a lot of experts. Okay? I know what's going on. I see it. I know.
Dallas says the Penguins' defensive play is terrible. Up 4-0 on the road. Change your game plan and dump and chase. Then have a third forward back in the Penguins' defensive zone. Cover someone. Wide open shots over and over. Then he adds another news. Pirates opening day on Thursday against the Marlins. How many wins are you guys predicting this year? You just said you don't think they're going to get over 81, right?
I'm going to go, how many did you said 76, right?
Yeah, 76.
I'm going to go with 77 so they can have made progress and we can bleed about it constantly.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, one win is progress. That's right. I mean, like, I don't know. I'm still not ready to say it or write it yet. I mean, I feel like this is a team that can get, I don't think they're going to get 10 games better. 10 games better puts them in wild card contention.
I can't believe I'm going to harp on this all year. I can't believe they didn't bring Bauer in. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Yeah. And like the notion, I've heard the usual suspects, the stooges say, well, they're worried he'd ruin the clubhouse. Gee, I'd hate to damage a clubhouse that hasn't won a playoff series since 1979. That would be just terrible to take apart the chemistry that's only had 4 winning seasons since 1992. How could you risk damaging that?
Let's get to Mike, who says, there's not one Steeler I wouldn't trade for future picks, especially our highest paid defense. Could get a king's ransom for Watt, Minka, High School.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. They're not going to do
that. Sean says, I understand Sullivan has a lengthy contract with FSG, but there isn't a way to buy him out, come to a mutual financial agreement to part ways.
I want to gauge what their level of interest is in making a move in that regard. But you know how people always say he'd have a job in 5 minutes? Well, okay. So would Tomlin. That doesn't mean they're the right fit for the jobs here in Pittsburgh. You know who Sullivan would be great for is New Jersey.
Because they got speed.
Speedy team on the rise. They're young, but he'd have no choice but to play their young guys.
Finally, Harvard Myers. Mike Sullivan should have been fired after the first-round loss to the Canadians 5 years ago, but please remember this is never Sully's fault. The odds of Pete Rose ever being back in baseball, 0%. Even when he's dead. Well, like I said, this is the best chance that Rose has had is somebody else getting caught.
When's he going to start talking? Rose? Yeah.
That's a good point. Well, no, I mean, usually he never shuts up.
If I was in Vegas, I'd be trying to find him.
Mark, before we go,
one thing too about the Sullivan thing.
Yeah.
Okay, as far as firing him after the Canadian series, that was in the bubble, right?
Yes.
Can't judge anything by what happened in the bubble. Like, I know guys on teams where they say they tank because they don't want to be there anymore.
Before we go, Mark, what'd you think of your alma mater, Duquesne, the run that they had, unfortunately coming to an end? I was there in Omaha on the call of the games, and they lost to Illinois. And, boy, Illinois just looked like a different animal than anything they've faced all year long.
Well, Illinois did what BYU couldn't. When you're a heavy favorite, you got to put the game away early, and they did. Illinois, though, they had – what's the kid's name that's going to be the first-round pick?
Yeah, you're talking about not Terrence, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a guy like that, that's a major upgrade, and BYU didn't.
Yeah, BYU had to rely on sets. BYU had to rely on running plays. They just didn't have the default, go ahead and break down this guy. You could do it with ISO. You could do it one-on-one. They could.
And BYU never played like or had a guy like where they put Duquesne in the position of, oh, man, what are we going to do?
Yeah, sorry, Terrence Shannon. Terrence was his first name. Terrence Shannon Jr. is the guy you're talking about.
You could see that in Duquesne. When Illinois got going, Duquesne bounced back in the second half and played hard the whole way through, but they were like for a while, boy.
Yeah, I mean,
boy.
It was just too much athleticism. Even though they were a bad defensive team in the Big Ten, that didn't matter against Duquesne. They turned defense into offense. They were really good offensively. They had mismatches at various spots. It's just Duquesne couldn't exploit the weaknesses that existed. It was just time. You know, they had a really good run. It was just time to face a better team.
They won 5 consecutive games where their season would have ended.
Right, yeah. Exactly.
How many teams do that? I mean, teams that do that, like NC State's kind of doing that now, even more so.
Right, yeah. You know, and I saw that a couple years ago following Syracuse. They're in the same situation.
BYU was blinded by the white, let's be honest. They're just way too white. And Tim, I got an idea. Here's my last word today.
Okay.
Okay, the Pirates don't want Trevor Bauer in their clubhouse, right?
Yeah.
You sign Trevor Bauer, he hangs out with me.
Okay.
Tell me and Trevor Bauer wouldn't be buddies.
So what? He would have his own dressing room in the Lexus Club with you, or the
whatever that club is. It's a tequila club.
Yeah, the tequila club, whatever it's called now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right. And on days he doesn't pitch, we just sit up there and slam shots. Actually, I don't think he does that. I think he's like a straight arrow guy, right? Straight edge.
Now, after like kind of having problems away from the field, is that what you mean?
Well, I mean, Tim, there's not going to be rough sex at the Casa whatever club.
Well,
I mean, it's just, but like that's the thing.
I don't know if he's like not a drinker or has never eaten a Big Mac. I don't know if he's one of those guys. If that's what you're asking.
He's a loner though. He's definitely a loner.
Oh yes, yeah, that was.
So am I. Fob him off on me. We'd have fun.
How's the trip to England going to go? What are you going to do? You're going to see 2 soccer games. Is that right?
3, 2 Liverpool.
Oh, okay, and then sports bars for the other ones, pubs to be a
it'll
neutral observer.
It'll be and tour of the stadium, tour of the museum, all that stuff. It'll be good.
All right, so Mark,
the only thing I want out of it is 6 points. 2 wins, 6 points.
Mark is on to.
I want to leave England in first place.
Listen to Mark today before he goes. He's on 3 until 6 throughout the week up until Friday. Then I'm in on Friday. Tom and I will swap off days here and there. We'll also be on 970 on Fox Sports Radio for the Bracket Buster shows for the Elite 8 and the Sweet 16. So listen to us there. And check us out. If you haven't heard it yet, the Madden Monday podcast is up at Trib Live. And Madden Benz Unfiltered will be on the stream next week with a host to be named later. We don't know who it'll be, but we'll figure it out. Mark, have a good trip, and we'll see you next week.